When defending my beloved cows from the tyrannical grip of our HOA president, I never expected to discover just how far one woman's determination could tip the scales of suburban justice. As I sat, sipping my coffee, and watching Bessie and Clover ambush the dandelions in my front yard, I felt a sense of serenity that only comes when you're surrounded by the simple joys of farm life. I just breathed in the intoxicating aroma of freshly brewed coffee when my bliss was shattered. The sound of rapid, furious footsteps approached, accompanied by a voice that could rally an army. Karen Whitmore, our HOA president, stalked up my driveway, her very presence akin to an impending storm. Clad in her usual uniform of tailored slacks and that unyielding bob, she looked as though she had just come from a stern lecture on how to be insufferable. "Jamie," she bellowed, eyes glinting with mischief, "your cows are ruining our neighborhood's image. They need to go." Here we go, I thought, mentally preparing to enter the ridiculous realm of Karen logic. "Karen," I replied, struggling to keep my expression neutral, while my mind concocted a steamroller of snarky comebacks. "I believe you meant to say my adorable cows are the highlight of our suburban existence." I gestured to the cheerful roster of neighbors watching from their porches, some of whom were now grinning wider than a Cheshire cat. They had clearly realized that Karen was about to dive into a fray where cows prospered and her reign of terror was about to be put on notice. Oh, this could get entertaining. According to my calculations, the last time Karen confronted anyone, it had ended with a neighborhood potluck and her attempting to serve carrot salad, which still haunted my dreams, ironically enough. The next few moments felt suspended in time, as if we were both starring in an absurd comedy. Karen waved her arms dramatically. "They devalue the neighborhood," she insisted, pointing accusingly towards my cows munching on what, to them, was gourmet grass. "You can't just flaunt livestock here like they're some kind of livestock Instagram influencers." My eyes nearly rolled off my face at that one. Really? Instagram influencer cows? I quickly whispered to Oliver, who had approached, ready to back me up with that infectious grin that took the edge off any tense situation. "Are we allowed to call them moo-tube sensations?" I joked, and we both stifled laughter, knowing full well that if only Karen had an ounce of humor, the world might be a much brighter place. With the challenge now set, I leaned against my porch railing, crossing my arms defiantly. "Karen, I hate to break it to you, but Bessie and Clover are protected by law as agricultural animals. You see, this isn't just a cozy HOA meeting. There are rules." I could see the gears in her brain shifting. Any notion of authority she thought she had was peeling back like an overbaked potato. "You can't just barge in here and expect me to comply with whimsy and resentment. It's the law. Are you really suggesting we should be less diverse?" The sarcasm dripped from my voice like honey, but it was Oliver's commentary that really punctuated the absurdity of the situation. "I'd love to see you explain to the police why you're trying to evict grass-munching tenants." Of course, no confrontation with Karen comes without a sprinkling of melodrama. She puffed up like a blowfish and argued she was demanding compliance for the greater good. Meanwhile, the greater good was polishing off the last of the lawn flowers I had planted just last spring. "Let's think about the kids. What will they learn if they don't have cows to inspire imagination?" I chimed in smoothly. "They might think all adults are just entitled adults with processed hair." The neighbors, already on my side after hearing my frantic calls, well, more like jubilant moos, rallied around me, cheering their approval like a cheesy sports event. The absurdity of it all was too thick to cut through, and Karen realized she was surrounded by a battalion of hilarity rather than submission. Realizing she was losing steam against a tide of unrelenting logic and community support, Karen took a step back. Perhaps she hadn't anticipated my cows would draw the loyalty of neighbors like a moth to a flame. If I had known, I would have held a cows and coffee gathering long ago. As she stomped back down my driveway, I took a deep breath, feeling the lightness wash over me, until I caught a glimpse of her fuming face through the slats of her front porch. With an exaggerated huff, she spun around and hollered, "This isn't over, Jamie Thompson. I'll have your cows out of this neighborhood yet." It was like watching a dramatic villain in a soap opera squeaking out her last threat. As she marched away, squawking carcinogenically as usual, Oliver and the neighbors joined in a collective laugh that echoed through the trees. I could almost feel Bessie roll her eyes in solidarity with us. Next time, we should hold a move-I night, Oliver quipped, and everyone, myself included, erupted into peals of laughter, imagining our furry friends getting the red carpet treatment. Life in suburbia was definitely more entertaining than I had anticipated, especially when you had a feisty HOA president testing the waters. But the question lingered. Could Karen's next move actually top this absurd attempt? With a bemused smile, I wondered what drama may run amok on our little plot of land next. The following days felt decidedly quieter, as if a stunned silence had enveloped our neighborhood. Of course, Karen's dramatic exit did not go unnoticed. My cows, Bessie and Clover, seemed unfazed, continuing their noble crusade of devouring whatever greenery dared cross their paths. I embraced my new status as a local celebrity, trading in cheese sandwiches for celebratory cookies baked from my grandmother's secret recipe, which unsurprisingly included a healthy dose of revenge. I watched with delight as the neighbors dropped by to lend their support, armed with cow-themed merchandise they bought online. Cow shirts, mugs, and even plush toys materialized on porches. Someone even painted a Save Our Cows graffiti mural on the community center wall. Oh, how I wished I had the mustache-twirling villainous ability to capture that flaring chaos like a scene from a poorly scripted sitcom. Yet while I reveled in my newfound fame within the neighborhood, I sensed that Karen was not entirely finished. It took a week, but then the unmistakable sound of her faux leather handbag clattering like an angry swarm of bees roused me from sofa slumber. I peeked through the curtains and found her at my front gate, waving a stack of papers as if they were dire secrets meant to condemn my farming lifestyle. Clearly, she'd found some new way to wield power, like a blunt instrument, a strategy that could make even Hulk Hogan cringe. I rolled my eyes in expectation of the latest petty obstacle she was about to thrust upon my cow-cuddling existence. Jamie, Karen's voice was like nails scraping against a chalkboard. I am filing a formal complaint with the HOA about your cows. It's time someone took charge, not just a herd of fawning neighbors and overgrown grass monsters, she declared, as if I had unleashed two-massed moose upon the unsuspecting suburban populace. I gave her my best horrified expression, folding my arms across my chest. Oh no, not a formal complaint. Please, anything but that. I shot back, sarcasm practically dripping from the air around us. The absurdity of her indignation about my cows was becoming almost comical. What made it more entertaining was the thrumming sound of Oliver quietly guffawing in the background, conveniently clutching a giant Mube balloon he had inflated in response to Karen's latest harassment. If my cows were a circus, Oliver had become the clumsy clown, wielding humor like a shield. Karen, here's a thought. Why don't we count the benefits of my cows? I suggested. They promote a farming-rich community, help bees thrive, and provide milk. What has your complaint done? Moved you further away from happiness? Quick as a flash, I tossed a worn-out straw hat atop Oliver's head as if he were the new mascot for Cow Appreciation Day. Karen's eyes narrowed, her brows knitted into a steely frown. You shouldn't make light of this, Jamie. This is the greater good we're discussing. Great. Here we were again, perched precariously at the edge of her entitlement, ready to tumble over the ledge of reality into a realm of absurdity where complaint paperwork took precedence over genuine community enjoyment. Greater good? Is this how you wish to mark your HOA legacy? You want to be the woman who single-handedly declares war on dairy? If Bessie and Clover leave, I assure you it'll be the greatest tragedy since the dawn of reality TV. But in that electric moment, with the flare of confidence from my wider audience at my back, something in me clicked. I straightened my spine, letting annoyance morph into triumph. Karen, I encourage a little diversity, I countered with a smirk. I mean, if my cows represent rustic charm while you represent, well, untamed rage, doesn't that make for quite the dynamic neighborhood? Talk about contrast. And, if you want to file a complaint, don't forget paper cuts are real hazards. Just imagine how hard that would be for a person who's all about maintaining their perfect image. Laughter erupted from the porch crowd as Karen fumed, her face turning a shade of crimson, reminiscent of a ripening tomato. At that moment, there was a palpable shift in the air. It was evident that even Karen had some comedic timing, but she stretched the limits too far. This wasn't a comedy stage, but I felt like a powerful heroine stepping onto a battleground riddled with absurdity, armed only with my loyal supporters, my cows, and an unwavering spirit. The neighborhood had transformed into our own theatrical playhouse, and I couldn't help but bask in my empowered state. Maybe this was the catharsis I never knew I needed. So what will it be, Karen? Shall we come to an understanding, or would you rather invest in bulk microwave popcorn for when the HOA meeting inevitably devolves into another fiasco? Her expression crumbled beneath the weight of her petulance, and for the first time, I detected a flicker of respect for a fight well fought, even if it was against a woman who sought to teach her neighbors a lesson in justice through overreach. As I stood my ground, I could see the neighbors beaming with approval, ready to storm any formal complaints that dared arise next. Regaining her stance, she pointed a finger at me, muttering about laws and bylaws, her anger mutating to frustrated laughter. The crowd was lighter, enjoying the show, and I reveled in the epic face-off, wondering what would come next in this silly saga of cows versus Karen. Who knew this would lead to a hometown legend? The absurdity of suburban drama had reached an all-time high, and I was left pondering what new antics Karen might plot amidst this chaotic farmyard revolution. The days following my showdown with Karen passed by in a whirlwind of laughter and triumph. But with each sunrise, a new tension began to brew in the confines of our neighborhood. I had expected Karen to sulk away, nursing her bruised ego while my cows and I enjoyed our little slice of suburban paradise, complete with cow-themed celebrations. Instead, she became a butterfly, batty and begrudgingly free, flitting from neighbor to neighbor, weaving tales of my cow corruption, like a demented bard. If I thought her initial antics were dramatic, they were mere prelude to what she had in store for us. A full-scale HOA investigation was about to begin, one that would put both my cows and my resolve to the test, and I found myself wondering, could this get any more ridiculous? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple like a watercolor painter whose brushes had gone awry, a solemn summons arrived in my mailbox. The HOA was convening a special meeting to address the imminent threat posed by my livestock. Excitement bubbled within me like cream fresh off the cow's udder. How utterly absurd. The meeting was to be held the following week, and like the good neighbor I was, I decided to put on a presentation that would rival a Broadway show. However, this time, I'd have an extra dash of flair. My old friend Oliver joined in, suggesting we create visual aids, complete with PowerPoint slides featuring adorable cow puns and graphics of Bessie and Clover, frolicking merrily in lush pastures. If we were going to swing this debacle back in our favor, we might as well make it a performance art piece. The night before the big event, as I found myself knee-deep in craft supplies, including glitter, obviously, colored paper, and excessive amounts of tape, I couldn't shake the voice of doubt nestled within me. What if Karen's antics held more weight than I imagined? Perhaps at this meeting the villagers were prepared to throw their pitchforks, metaphorically, of course, at my beloved cows. Just as I began to spiral into my imaginative worst-case scenarios, my phone buzzed with a reassuring message from Oliver. Just remember, Jamie, you are the protagonist of this story. Stay playful. Think cows, not chaos. Coupled with a picture of my two bovine buddies chewing on hay, I couldn't help but chuckle. If anyone was ready to throw a heroic hoedown, it was me. The day of reckoning arrived, and the HOA meeting engulfed the community center in a tide of suffocating formality. Karen sat at the front like a queen on her throne, glaring over a stack of papers, her evidence. No doubt, while I arrived, decked out in my best cow print attire, flanked by Oliver and a newfound legion of cow supporters, the mood was electric, and as I glanced at the sea of familiar faces, I felt buoyed by their encouragement. With my notes in one hand and a hefty slice of grassroots enthusiasm fueling my spirit, I rose to the pulpit, feeling like an unexpected TED Talk star. "Good evening, esteemed members of the HOA," I began, greeting them with a cheeky wave and eliciting a few chuckles from my allies in the crowd. "If you're here to discuss my cows today, please don't move away just yet." The laughter erupted, and I fed off it like a cow frolicking in a field of clover, launching into the spectacularly crafted presentation. "Now, folks, let's talk about the imminent threat Karen fears from these gentle giants," I said, flipping through slides that depicted my cows being cuter than kittens wearing tiny top hats. Faces cracked with amusement while I showcased the myriad of benefits that came from farming. Bessie and Clover were environmental warriors, reducing our carbon footprint ingeniously by converting grass into delicious dairy. I accented each point with exaggerated gestures, striking up images of grass-fed cows leaping through daisies, an innocent escape from the mundane display of uptight suburban living we all dwelled in. The energy fell heavily on Karen as she sat glaring daggers, her once faux aura now dimmed by the community's growing support. As objections from the peanut gallery diminished into laughter and smiles of reassurance, I felt a swell of optimism take hold. My cows weren't just farm animals. They were symbols of unity and resilience against petty authority. Karen's glare turned into an awkward half-smile as she uncovered the absurdity of her own quest against movement. By the time I triumphantly closed my presentation with the assertion that living in a community should mean compromising our love for uniqueness, not stifling it, the room was alive with a thunderous round of applause, and there was no denying the seismic shift in perspective unfolding before my eyes. Even Oliver was enthusiastically gesticulating in the back, bearing a sign that said, "Cows are my BFFs," the ultimate support that turned our gathering from stern to splendid. In the aftermath of the magnificent showdown, Karen eventually puttered away, her dreams of HOA dominion dashed against the rocks of camaraderie and laughter, her complaints buried beneath waves of bovine support. It was a reminder that sometimes ridiculousness is the finest tool in a battle against entitlement. Folks were cheering not just for Bessie and Clover, they were cheering for a spirit that challenged the status quo. I was left standing in the middle of the community center with a satisfied grin, feeling like my backyard had transformed into a vibrant pasture of positivity and humor. Never had suburban life felt so alive. So what was next for me and my team of militant cows? Perhaps a cow appreciation event to officially celebrate our triumphant saga, or even inviting Karen to rejoin the fray, this time with a little less intensity and a generous dose of frosting on our celebratory cake. However, I knew better than to underestimate the antics of a woman like Karen. What daring escapade would she conjure next in her never-ending quest for control? The aftermath of the HOA meeting felt like the local small-town fair had come to life in my backyard. Banners adorned with catchy cow-themed phrases fluttered proudly in the breeze, while the scent of homemade cow-patterned cupcakes wafted through the air. I felt a whirlwind of joy, buoyed by the laughter of my neighbors who had transformed into an unofficial cow-loving committee. To mark this victory, our glorious Cownivale, as Oliver dubbed it, was set to take place next weekend, and every moment spent in planning it felt like the sweetness of victory coating my spirit. But the delighted atmosphere was not to last long. Somewhere, lurking in the shadows of my suburban utopia, a cow-hating Karen was stirring, no doubt plotting her next move to reclaim her tarnished prestige. As fate would have it, the moment I let my guard down while adjusting the festive cow decor, my phone buzzed with an ominous message. "Have you seen the signage?" My heart dropped as I scrolled through Oliver's latest photograph from earlier that day. In the town square, right near the Cows Bring the Moolah, bake sale poster, was Karen, her sharp-tongued persona on full display. Flanked by her unwitting minions, a few choice HOA board members, and an unfortunate collection of passive locals, she had erected an enormous banner reading, "Cows are a public nuisance." Oh, the audacity. The irony of a woman notorious for making noise, enforcing rules, and relentlessly hurling accusations against all things unconventional, now claiming to represent public peace was irresistibly laughable. and utterly infuriating. Fueled by the absurdity of her latest ploy, I decided that if she wanted a war, I would provide the battlefield. With Oliver's legal expertise at my disposal and a determination that could outlast any cow's chewing session, we put together a plan that would not only defend my bovine companions, but also poke fun at Karen's escalating antics. Operation Moo-nopoly commenced. We rallied the neighborhood, crafting signs that not only countered Karen's but also displayed our unrestrained love for the cows. Bessie, Clover, the real neighborhood guardians, and dairy cows are petty crime fighters, became emblazoned on posters as we all donned cowprint apparel in a show of solidarity. The triviality of our situation flickered in everyone's eyes. Being part of an absurd movement rallying for bovine rights felt like liberation from the shackles of plain suburbia. The grand day of our carnival finally arrived, and it rolled in like a delightful dream. It was an explosion of joy, laughter, and deliciously milky treats. The sun smirked down upon us as families gathered, sporting their best cow-themed crafts, and the sound of laughter resonated in the air. The center of our backyard transformed into a whimsical petting zoo. My unbothered cows, Bessie and Clover, enjoyed the attention of children donning cow ears and licking ice cream with such joy that it made my heart swell. The elasticity of the moment felt almost epic, as if we had converged into this parallel universe where Karen's reign of terror and control was nothing but a childish tantrum in the face of our community's love for these gentle giants. But just as our festivities hit a peak, it wasn't long before Karen's stormy visage descended upon us. With her signature glare and a cadre of HOA board members behind her, she stood at the fringes, arms crossed and tapping one foot impatiently like a cowpoke at her wit's end. "This is a blatant misuse of community resources," she bellowed, her voice straining against the vibrant laughter surrounding us. The thrill of the event dulled momentarily. A collective breath held as an awkward silence draped itself over the crowd. Just as I prepared to unleash my signature witty retort, an unexpected voice chimed in. "Oliver's!" "Karen," he said, his voice buoyed by courage, "the only nuisance here is the uptight spirit you're bringing into our happy gathering. This is a celebration of laughter and community." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, my heart racing at the unexpected turn of events. Karen's eyes widened momentarily, disbelief etched in her features, but she regained her composure quickly. "This is nothing to celebrate. Cows bring bugs, mess, and—" she stammered. But before she could finish, Bessie, with impeccable timing, let out a low, resounding moo as if performing a solo in an opera, right in the middle of her diatribe. The comic timing could not have been more perfect. Laughter echoed all around, cutting through the tension like a knife through warm butter. Bessie and Clover became something more than just four-legged companions. They were our heroes, champions of laughter fighting against the absurd rigidity of our self-elected overlord. It was impossible to ignore the electric momentum shifting toward our favor, and I seized the moment. Striding forward with bravado, I addressed the crowd with a grin. Clearly, our festivities are a welcome reprieve from the HOA's ambrosia of control. Today we celebrate community, unity, creativity, and yes, our cows. If Karen believes they're a nuisance, perhaps we should put her on the Cows Measure Renewal Committee. The jubilant cheers erupted once again, and as Karen's face turned a spectacle of distress, I felt empowered, surrounded by my neighbors like loyal steers ready to take on the world. Her grip on authority was slipping as she darted towards her followers like a moth drawn to a contrived flame. As Karen retreated, muttering under her breath, a sense of triumph washed over me like the summer sun warming the earth after a long winter. The true absurdity of our battle illuminated before us, my backyard became the nucleus of joyful rebellion against stifling entitlement. The jovial ambiance solidified our bond as we all laughed together, forging an atmosphere where cows weren't merely welcome. They had become the epicenter of friendship, laughter, and community spirit. So, what would happen next with our bovine friends as the heart of our neighborhood? Would there be cow-themed parades? Perhaps Karen's spiteful plans would come back through the hayfields? Only time would tell, and with that, I welcomed the anticipation of what fresh chaos we would all delight in embracing together. As the carnival festivities began to wind down and the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over our celebratory chaos, I couldn't help but bask in the warmth of victory. Neighbors, now united by bovine camaraderie, were chatting and laughing, their plates piled high with cow cupcakes still frosted with sweet buttercream. Meanwhile, Bessie and Clover, the stars of our show, became a source of endless joy for the kids, who took turns feeding them treats. The joyous clamor of children's giggles and friendly banter among adults filled the air, weaving a rich tapestry of community spirit that had been absent for far too long. Who would have thought a couple of cows could bring us all together? I mused to Oliver, who was animatedly demonstrating how to milk a rubber udder to a group of wide-eyed children. The absurdity of it all made me chuckle. As if in an echo of my inner musings, a familiar voice broke through the jubilant atmosphere. "This is all a disgrace!" Karen had returned, dark clouds looming above her head as she stormed back into the scene, her minions in tow. "This isn't a carnival. It's a shameful display of disgusting livestock parading through our lovely neighborhood." She gestured dramatically, as though conjuring an invisible stage upon which to unleash her performance of negativity. I briefly considered throwing confetti in her face, wishing to transform her sour frown into a delightful spray of sparkles. Instead, I maintained my composure, grinning like a Cheshire cat while contemplating how to best throw a wrench into her outrage. In a moment that felt scripted for a comedy show, Oliver stepped forward again, his hands raised in mock surrender. "Oh, Karen, don't you know? Cows are not only adorable but also highly therapeutic. They bring peace. Look around. Everyone is smiling, especially the children. Since when did joy and community become such a nuisance?" The crowd rallied behind him, clapping and cheering as if engaged in an epic battle between good and evil. I couldn't help but revel in the collective enthusiasm, feeling every ounce of animosity towards Karen fade like an old unpleasant echo. Would she finally realize that her tirade was falling flat, and the crowd had a choice to embrace joy over her negative energy? It would almost be poetic if I didn't find her persistence so dull. As she prepared to retort, Bessie seemed to take an elaborate pause to stretch her neck, almost as if she were warming up for a grand performance. And oh, how grand it turned out to be. In a moment that would surely make urban homesteaders everywhere proud, she let out a majestic moo that resonated through the evening air, disrupting Karen's indignation mid-sentence. For a brief heartbeat, I dared to think Bessie might be calling for a toast to our prosperity and hard-earned unity. Laughter erupted once more, and Karen's face morphed into a unique shade of crimson as she realized she was losing, not just a battle, but the entire war against joy and community. Her trademark glare softened, giving way to pure, unadulterated annoyance. Spurred on by my newfound confidence and an almost theatrical flair, I jumped on a hay bale, the impromptu podium that Bessie claimed as her own. "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for some truth," I announced, amplifying my voice dramatically as if I were about to reveal a mystery of the highest order. "Who here found joy today?" The crowd leaped in agreement, hands shooting up like cows vying for the best patch of grass. Who believes that Miller Farms and its fabulous bovine residents should remain an everlasting part of our community? More cheers erupted, the sound echoing off the fence like the grand finale of a fireworks show. Now it was Karen's turn to look lost in a sea of absurdity. "Do you see? You're all being swayed by a bunch of grass-munching fluffballs," she protested vainly, arms flailing in exasperation. But the laughter, cheers, and ice cream cones entirely drowned her out. At this point, I was convinced even my cows had started to know the lyrics to "We Will Rock You." The coalescence of defeat and stubborn pride danced in Karen's scowl as she blinked back disbelief. Could her reign of terror truly be challenged by mere joy, laughter, and, the horror, cows? As I descended from my haystack podium, Ollie nudged me and whispered, "I think we officially gained the upper hand in the war for community spirit, Jamie. Time to make it official, right?" His wide grin mirrored my own exhilaration and anticipation. "Absolutely. Let's put this cows are a public nuisance. Nonsense out to pasture once and for all, I replied, fists balled in enthusiastic determination. With the carnival fresh in our hearts, we decided to band together, drafting a proposal to the HOA that not only protected Bessie and Clover, but elevated their status as community mascots promoting family and natural living. As the night wore on and the stars began to twinkle above us, I exchanged hopeful glances with my neighbors over our newly concocted cow manifesto. We would finally put forth a petition emphasizing the importance of preserving not only farmland, but our sense of community, built upon laughter and open hearts. It felt as if the essence of Bessie and Clover was urging us forward, a cosmic push against the rigidity that had long tried to reign over the conversations of our neighborhood. And as I watched laughter ripple through our little corner of the world, I felt the delightful thrill of possibility. Perhaps even an unexpected friendship with Karen could be forged in the funny fires of community spirit and cow love. What lay ahead in this fantastical farmyard saga? Only time would tell if laughter could transform the bitterest of foes into a supportive neighbor. As the thrill of the carnival faded into whimsical memories, I found myself poring through the minuscule guidelines set forth by the HOA, those dreadful documents that resembled ancient scrolls doomed to serve as fodder for papier-mâché. Armed with a cup of steaming coffee and a newfound determination to unleash my bovine family upon the world as community treasures, I began piecing together our official proposal. The plan sounded simple: present every argument Oliver and I could muster to demonstrate why Bessie and Clover were integral to our neighborhood spirit, not a nuisance in any shape or form. Each keystroke felt like cementing a legacy, a way to highlight the joy they brought to everyone, while simultaneously sticking it to Karen, who undoubtedly believed her power was untouchable. Naturally, Oliver was right there with me, spewing his infectious enthusiasm like a caffeinated squirrel as we crafted our plea for cow legitimacy. "Think of it this way," he said, shoving the tip of his pen against the air as if it were a lightsaber. "If you can convince them that cows promote mental well-being, we're giving Bessie and Clover superhero status. They could be the caped crusaders of our neighborhood, wielding moo-tastic powers that vanquish stress and replace it with happiness." I couldn't help but snort into my coffee at his antics. Not only was he witty, but he also provided an outlet for my bubbling squeals of excitement. As we tapped out the ridiculous, yet oddly compelling arguments that spilled forth from our caffeine-fueled brainstorming, I felt an electric charge of purpose spark among our community group, like we were gathered around a bonfire exchanging secrets. With each brainstorming session, the word cow began to morph into something brighter, and our pitch turned into a creative masterpiece. We reached out to neighbors we had once only waved at across the driveway, gathering testimonials about Bessie and Clover's impactful presence on mental health, who knew advocating for cows could come with such commendable responsibility. Amidst the squirrels, dogs, and occasional cat that sat atop porch railings, we recounted tales of Bessie rescinding tantrums and Clover chasing away dark clouds of suburban drudgery. It would seem that laughter truly was the remedy we needed. We even dubbed our cows the ambassadors of Moo D. The lighthearted titles seemed to transform what could have been a rather monotonous meeting into a joyous event, punctuated by boisterous laughter that rivaled the animated debates of a game show audience. Our motley crew coalesced into a legion of bovine advocates, complete with a petition that became highly sought after, like the latest fashion trend. Days passed in a flurry of canvassing, with each neighbor we approached failing to resist the charm of the "Cows Are Not a Nuisance" campaign. I felt proud to witness transformation within our community, and my heart burbled affectionately as I saw Oliver dive into conversations about sustainability and farm-to-table living, while the children lined up to pet our ambassadors and gain badges of honor in the fight for pastoral rights. I was exhilarated by this newfound camaraderie. Each signature added to our cause felt like a delicious scoop of ice cream on a warm day. Then came Karen's turn to interject. Leaning against her SUV like a disgruntled crow, she squawked about maintaining the neighborhood's aesthetic, as if our vibrant lawn hosted an unsightly annex of cow lingerie. You can't just commandeer good taste with mooing miscreants, she bellowed, arms akimbo and the ever-ominous Karen glare fixed in place. I caught a glimpse of Bessie and Clover nestled among the daisies. And if the cows were confused about which neighborhood villain was more persistent, the HOA queen or the notorious neighborhood cat dressed as a ghost, then they were expertly hiding it with gentle munching. Conversely, the laughter from our supporters drew a line in the proverbial sand, leaving Karen left squawking in the void of her own negativity, her power dwindling. After that day, it was clear that Karen had no intention of backing down. I watched with amusement as she rallied her own posse of disgruntled homeowners to reinforce her dominion over community guidelines, likely glaring at fruit trees sprouting wild like unruly children, the gall. As we prepared for our next HOA meeting, I crammed a lawsuit's worth of nuts and bolts into Oliver's ears. We can't waver in this, Ollie. The cows need us to be their advocates. Plus, do you really want to give Karen any satisfaction? His upbeat energy radiated through the room as he whispered, "Not on my watch, Jamie. Boo-hoo, Karen." Feeling emboldened, I bolstered my courage, adjusting my plaid shirt like it was an armor of strength, and calling upon a battalion of humor to rebut her overreaching grasp of our newly found happiness. At the HOA meeting that followed, our anticipation vibrated through the air, much like a child waiting for their turn on a swing. Armed with our petition, our testimonies, and the unstoppable spirit of all 200 pounds of our fine bovine ladies, I stood at the podium, ready to present our case. The first round of questions emerged. Why cows? How could this possibly promote anything? Each snide inquiry felt like a request for an encore performance, fueling my resolve. I mustered a smirk, answering, "They're like cuddly therapists, folks. Who wouldn't want free counseling?" The room erupted in laughter, and I felt Oliver's palpable excitement radiating as Karen's smug expression crumbled, replaced by disbelief, that much sweeter than fresh cream. In the end, against the backdrop of chuckles and cheers, our proposal passed with a resounding success. The HOA designated Bessie and Clover as Neighborhood Guardians of Happiness, a title even ceremoniously carved into a stone plaque nestled among the gardens. Karen, with a blend of horror and begrudging respect, watched as I pinned a decorative badge on my cows, her eyes resembling saucers. I couldn't help but think how delightfully ironic it was that what had started as a strange roadblock to neighborhood tranquility had morphed into something astonishingly triumphant. As Bessie munched on greens and Clover tilted her adorably expressive head, I reveled in the realization that I could effectively champion joy against entitlement, with humor as our ultimate weapon. Now that was one for the books, wasn't it?